If your hair has become finer after 60, the haircut matters more than almost anything you put on it afterward. Because a styling product can give you temporary volume. A round brush can lift the roots. A roller can create shape. But if the haircut itself removes too much density, puts the volume in the wrong place, or leaves the ends too weak, you are going to spend every morning trying to correct a problem that was created in the salon chair. And this is where many women get frustrated. They say, "My hair used to look fuller. I have to work so much harder to style it now. Every time I get layers, it somehow looks thinner." Or, "My stylist says this cut gives me volume, but I don't see it." That does not necessarily mean you need more hair. Sometimes you simply need to stop cutting the hair you have in a way that visually removes density. Today, I'm showing you 7 haircut mistakes that can make fine hair after 60 look thinner, and exactly what tends to work better instead. And number 1 is especially important because it is something many women specifically request because they believe it will give them more volume. Let's start with number 7. Number 7, cutting the perimeter too wispy. Look at the bottom edge of your hair. Not the crown, not the bangs, the very ends. If you can see large gaps through that perimeter, the entire haircut may appear thinner than it really is. This is one of the most important visual principles with fine hair. The eye does not count individual strands. It reads shape and density. A strong bottom edge tells the eye, there is plenty of hair here. A very feathered, broken, transparent edge sends the opposite message. And sometimes, that transparent perimeter is created intentionally. A stylist may point cut aggressively into the ends, use thinning shears, razor the perimeter, or add so much texture that the bottom starts looking delicate and airy. That can be beautiful on thick hair. If someone has an enormous amount of density, removing weight can make the haircut move better. But fine hair usually does not have excess density waiting to be removed. What works better? Protect the outline. That does not mean every woman needs a severe blunt cut. The perimeter can still feel soft. It can still have movement. It can still be slightly textured. But when you look at the bottom, you should see enough visual weight that the hairstyle feels intentional. For a bob, that may mean a cleaner line around the jaw. For a lob, it may mean keeping more density near the collarbone. For longer hair, it may mean sacrificing 2 or 3 weak inches so that what remains looks dramatically fuller. Here is a very useful sentence to say in the salon. I want the ends to stay full, even if we add movement above them. That tells the stylist something very specific. You are not asking for heavy hair. You are asking them to protect your density. And there is a second mistake that often destroys that density even faster. I also created a complete 60+ hair guide with flattering haircut ideas, styling fixes for fine hair, and simple salon tips you can take with you to your next appointment. It is designed to help you understand which cuts create better shape, where volume should sit. If you'd like to check it out, you'll find the product link in the first pinned comment below. Number 6, using thinning shears on hair that is already fine thinning. Shears have a purpose. They are useful when someone has very dense hair and needs excess bulk removed. But if your hair is already fine, you should understand exactly why those shears are being used before a large amount of hair is removed. Because thinning shears do exactly what their name suggests. They remove strands. Imagine you have 100 visible strands forming a section. Then part of that section is cut shorter internally. The overall shape may become lighter, but visually, you may now have fewer hairs reaching the bottom. That can make the perimeter look weaker. And the frustrating part is that you might not notice it immediately. Right after the salon appointment, everything has been professionally blow-dried. The roots are lifted, the hair is polished, it looks beautiful. Then you wash it yourself 2 days later. Suddenly the bottom feels thinner. The sections do not sit together. You have small flyaway pieces, and you cannot figure out what changed. Sometimes the problem is internal thinning. What works better? Ask what problem the stylist is trying to solve. If they say, "Your hair is too bulky here," that may be reasonable. But if your concern is already lack of density, tell them. Say, "My priority is making the hair look fuller. I don't want unnecessary weight removed." Fine hair can still need texture, but texture should be strategic. For example, a stylist may lightly soften one area so the haircut does not look too rigid. That is very different from running thinning shears throughout the entire head. This is another pattern you will notice throughout this video. With fine hair, the goal is usually not to remove as much as possible. It is to decide very carefully where every bit of hair should stay. And number 5 is where many women lose density without realizing it. Number 5, starting the layers too high. Layers can create lift. That is true. But layers can also remove weight. Both statements can be true at the same time. The question is, where do the layers begin? Suppose your hair is shoulder length. If the shortest layers begin very high near the top of the head and then continue all the way downward, the stylist creates a lot of different lengths. The crown may feel lighter, but every time a layer ends before reaching the bottom, fewer hairs are contributing to that bottom perimeter. The result can become what I call the Christmas tree problem. There is volume near the top, then less density through the middle, then very little at the ends. That may technically be layered, but it does not necessarily look fuller. What works better? Start with the goal. If you need lift mainly at the crown, you may only need carefully placed shorter sections in that area. You do not automatically need aggressive layers throughout the entire haircut. If you want movement around the face, you can add face framing pieces without destroying the weight in the back. If you want the ends to swing more, the stylist can soften selected areas. Fine hair often benefits from fewer, more purposeful layers. Imagine a bob with a strong lower edge and subtle internal lift. Or a lob where the longest pieces remain substantial, while only the front has gentle movement. Those cuts can appear much denser because most of the hair still reaches the perimeter. And this is why I would be careful about walking into the salon and simply saying, "Give me lots of layers for volume." Instead say, "I want crown lift, but I don't want to lose density through the ends." That tells the stylist where the trade-off matters. And the next mistake is almost the opposite. Sometimes women keep everything one length because they are afraid layers will make the hair thinner. That can create its own problem. Number 4, keeping fine hair one length, when the crown needs support. Now this may sound like I am contradicting what I just said. First I told you not to overlayer. Now I am telling you one length can be a problem. But this is exactly why haircut advice cannot be reduced to layers are good or layers are bad. It depends on the hair. Imagine fine hair that reaches the shoulders. Every strand is approximately the same length. The perimeter may look beautifully dense, but the crown is carrying the full weight of those lengths. And if your hair naturally lies flat, that weight can pull everything downward. You end up with a nice-looking bottom and a very flat top. What works better? Keep the strong perimeter, but introduce just enough support above it. That might mean very subtle internal layers around the crown. Not a dramatic staircase of layers. Not short pieces sticking up everywhere. Just enough variation that the roots are not carrying the same weight across the entire haircut. You can also use face framing pieces to create movement without removing density from the back. This is where an experienced stylist earns their money. The goal is balance. You want enough weight at the bottom to create fullness, but not so much weight that the entire hairstyle collapses at the top. Think of it like architecture again. The base needs strength, but the top needs structure. If everything is heavy at the bottom and completely unsupported above, the silhouette can become flat. And number 3 can make that silhouette even worse because it places the width in exactly the wrong area. Number 3, building the haircut too wide at the sides. This is one of those haircut problems you may feel before you know how to describe it. You leave the salon. Your hair has volume. Technically, it looks full, but something about the shape feels wrong. You look in the mirror and the hair seems wider near your cheeks than it does at the crown. That can happen with certain rounded cuts, especially short layered cuts where too much bulk is left around the ears and sides while the top stays relatively flat. The hairstyle expands outward. The face can look wider. And strangely, the crown can look even thinner because the contrast makes the top appear narrower. What works better? Think vertical before horizontal. You do not need a tall hairstyle. You simply want enough subtle lift at the crown that the silhouette feels balanced. The sides can stay soft. They can still have movement, but they should not become the widest point of the entire hairstyle unless that is deliberately flattering your face shape. For shorter hair, a slightly more tapered side can help. For a bob, removing a little unnecessary bulk behind the ears can create a cleaner shape. For medium hair, gentle crown support combined with face framing can pull the eye upward. This is a detail worth checking in photographs. Stand straight and have someone take a picture from the front. Do not pose. Do not tilt your head. Look at the outline of the hairstyle. Where is it widest? Where is it highest? Where does your eye go first? Sometimes the problem becomes obvious in a photograph, even though you could not identify it in the mirror. And the next mistake is another shape problem that often gets blamed on age. Number 2, letting the cut become too round. There is a certain short haircut that many women receive after 60. It is practical, easy to maintain, easy to blow dry, and every section curves inward. The sides curve toward the cheeks. The back curves toward the neck. The top curves around the head. Nothing is necessarily wrong with it, but everything follows the same round shape. And when the haircut becomes too round, it can lose movement and direction. Fine hair especially can start looking like one soft helmet rather than individual sections with dimension. Why does that matter? Because modern-looking hair usually has some directional contrast. Maybe the crown lifts slightly. Maybe the fringe moves sideways. Maybe one side tucks behind the ear. Maybe the back is a little more tapered. Those changes create shape. Without them, the haircut can feel static. What works better? Introduce direction. If you have a short cut, try a slightly longer side-swept fringe. Keep a little movement on top. Taper the lower sides instead of making everything equally full. For a bob, consider a subtle angle or face framing section. For medium hair, create movement that does not all curve toward the same point. And notice what I am not saying. I am not saying never wear a rounded haircut. Some faces look beautiful with softness. I am saying avoid allowing every part of the haircut to do exactly the same thing. Variety creates life. One area can be smooth. Another can have lift. Another can have movement. That creates dimension without requiring a lot of hair. And now we reach number 1. This is the mistake I see women make specifically because they are trying to create volume. Number 1, asking for short layers everywhere to make fine hair look fuller. This sounds logical. Shorter hair weighs less. Less weight should mean more volume. So if some short layers create volume, why not create more of them? Because volume and density are not the same thing. This is probably the most important concept in this entire video. Volume is how much space the hair occupies. Density is how much hair appears to be present. You can increase one while reducing the other. Imagine a haircut with dozens of short layers. Those short pieces may lift beautifully near the crown. The hairstyle occupies more space. So technically, you created volume, but because fewer strands reach the perimeter, the ends can look thinner. You gained height, but lost density. And sometimes the overall result looks like less hair, not more. What works better? Decide where you actually need volume. For many women with fine hair, that is primarily the crown. Maybe a little around the upper sides. Maybe some movement near the cheekbones. You do not necessarily need short pieces everywhere. Keep the areas where you want density more substantial. Then add selective shorter sections where lift matters. This creates something much more sophisticated than simply layering everything. Think: density at the perimeter, lift at the crown, movement around the face. Those three things can work together. And this is where haircut design becomes more important than haircut length. A 70-year-old woman can look fantastic with a pixie. Another can look fantastic with a bob. Another can look fantastic with shoulder-length hair. There is no universal correct length, but all three hairstyles should have intentional shape. The fine hair triangle. If you want an easy way to remember everything we just discussed, think about three areas. The crown. This is where you usually want some lift. Not enormous height, just enough that the hair does not look glued to the scalp. The face. This is where you want direction and movement. A soft fringe. A face framing layer. A piece that curves toward or away from the cheekbone, depending on what flatters you. The perimeter. This is where you want enough density that the haircut does not disappear. Those are your three zones. Crown, lift, face, movement, perimeter, density. If your haircut gives you those three things, styling becomes dramatically easier. How to know if your current haircut is making fine hair look thinner. Here's something you can do tonight. Stand in front of a mirror with your hair completely dry. Do not style it more first. Look at the bottom edge. Can you see through large parts of it? Then the perimeter may be too weak. Now look at the crown. Does it collapse completely against the scalp? Then the cut may need better internal support. Look at the sides. Are they wider than the crown? The shape may be too horizontal. Now look around your face. Does everything fall straight down with no intention? You may need better face framing. And finally, pick up one section of hair and look at the number of different lengths inside it. If almost every strand seems to end somewhere different, you may have more layering than your density can support. You do not need to diagnose your own haircut perfectly. You just need enough information to explain what you are seeing to your stylist. What to say in the salon. Fine hair appointments often go wrong because the client describes the solution instead of the problem. For example, I need more layers. That is a solution, but the real problem may be, my crown is flat. Those are not the same statement. If you say, my crown is flat, but my ends already look thin, the stylist has much better information. Try phrases like, I want more lift at the crown without removing too much hair from the ends. Or, my perimeter looks weak. Can we strengthen the outline? Or, I want movement around my face, but I don't want lots of short layers everywhere. Or, can you show me where you plan to remove weight before you start? That last question is excellent. A good stylist should be able to explain the shape. You do not need professional terminology. You simply need to explain the visual result you want. Should fine hair be short? This is one of the questions women ask constantly. The answer is not necessarily. Fine hair and thin hair are not exactly the same. Fine describes the diameter of each strand. Density describes how many strands you have. Someone can have very fine strands, but plenty of them. Another woman may have thicker strands, but lower overall density. That is why one rule cannot apply to everyone. Short hair can look fuller because there is less weight, but longer hair can also look beautiful if the perimeter remains strong. The question is not, am I too old for long hair? The better question is, at what length does my hair still look dense and healthy? For one woman, that may be below the shoulders. For another, the collarbone. For another, the jaw. Your best length is often the point just before the ends begin looking weak. What about pixie cuts? Pixies can be excellent for fine hair. But even pixies can be cut in ways that reduce fullness. If every section is heavily texturized, the scalp may become more visible. If the sides are cut extremely short, but the crown is not shaped properly, you may end up exposing more scalp than you intended. The best fine hair pixies usually keep enough strategic length on top to create texture and movement. The sides can be controlled. The neckline can be clean, but the top needs something to work with. Again, do not remove hair simply because the haircut is short. Short hair still needs density. What about bobs? Bobs are popular for fine hair for a reason. The strong perimeter can create the illusion of thicker hair immediately. But not every bob works the same way. A very heavily graduated bob may remove too much from some hair types. An extremely stacked back can create volume behind the head while leaving the sides too thin. A heavily layered bob can lose the exact density that makes a bob useful. For many women with fine hair, a softer bob with a reasonably strong perimeter and modest internal shaping works beautifully. You still get movement, but the outline remains visible. What about longer hair? Long, fine hair needs one thing more than anything else: healthy-looking ends. If you want to keep length, protect the perimeter aggressively. Trim the weakest ends before they become extremely transparent. Be careful with too many layers. And remember that long hair does not have to be perfectly one length. You can still add movement around the face. You can still create some crown support. The key is not sacrificing the entire bottom half of the haircut in the name of movement. The haircut should work before you style it. This may be the best test of all. After your next haircut, wash your hair yourself. Let it dry naturally or give it a very simple blow dry. Then look at the shape. Does the haircut still have structure? Does the perimeter still look strong? Is there some natural direction around the face? Does the crown have a chance of lifting? If the haircut only looks good after 20 minutes of professional round brush styling, the cut may not be doing enough work. A good haircut should make your routine easier, not create another job. Final thought. Fine hair after 60 does not necessarily need more layers. It does not necessarily need to be shorter. It does not necessarily need aggressive texturizing. And it definitely does not need every bit of density removed in the name of volume. What it needs is intention. Keep density where density matters. Create lift where lift matters. Create movement where movement matters. And stop asking one part of the haircut to solve every problem. The crown does not need to behave like the ends. The sides do not need to behave like the fringe. The perimeter does not need to behave like the top. Each part has a job, and when those jobs work together, fine hair can look dramatically fuller without adding a single extra strand. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 7 haircut mistakes do you think your current haircut may be making?